office. Croeso. So the first item on the agenda is apologies. Lisa, do we have any apologies, please?
No apologies, but I have had notification from Councillor Beard and Councillor Brynmore Hughes that they might have to leave early.
Okay, diolch yn fawr, thank you. The second item on the agenda is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? I can see Councillor Jeff Evans raising his hand. Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any declaration of interest, but in relation to number 1 there, unfortunately, I am awaiting 2 phone calls on extremely urgent council business. And if I have to leave my phone on, and if that rings, I will have to respond to it. I will have to respond to those because they are quite serious issues, which I really have to address. So I apologise that if that does ring, I'm hoping it doesn't interrupt this meeting, but if it does ring, then I will have to respond. Apologies.
That's fine, Jeff. Thanks for letting us know. Are there any declarations of interest? I can't see any hands being raised. In that case, on to item 3, which is notice of urgent matters. I haven't received any notice of any urgent matters, so there won't be any to deal with. So we go on to item 4, which is minutes of the last meeting. So we'll deal first of all with accuracy. So if we look at page number 1 to begin with, page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5, and page 6, and page 7, and page 8 to conclude. I can't see any hands raised, so could somebody formally propose that we accept the minutes of the last meeting, please? I think Councillor Dale Sylvester, Councillor Gareth Sandilands, could you all show that you accept the minutes of the last meeting, please? Diolch yn fawr. So item 5, matters arising from the last meeting. I did spot one thing, item 10, and I'm glad that Mike is with us. We had a presentation from Audit Wales at the last meeting, Mike, and it was agreed that a copy of the presentation would be sent out to members, but I don't think we've received that.
Sorry to hear that, Chair. I'll chase that up with Eros and Nick Selwyn, and I'll hopefully get that out to you today.
That's great. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any matters arising from the last minutes? I can't see any of the hands being raised, so that's fine. So we'll move on to item 6, which is the Chair's report. So you've had a report detailing what meetings and events myself and the Deputy Chair have been attending over the last few months. Can I highlight for those who haven't had yet the opportunity of attending the ceremony of achievement with the conclusion of Phoenix courses, they're well worth getting along to. So as and when one takes place in your area, can I encourage you to get along? The Deputy Chair myself have been to a number, and they really are heart affirming and yeah, very inspiring. So I thoroughly recommend getting along to one of those courses. Any questions or comments for myself or the Deputy Chair? No, then moving on to item number 7, which is the Firefighters Pay Awards and Potential Industrial Action.
Sorry,
Mr. Chief.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Gareth.
Yeah, just a question around the social partnerships you've attended. I just wanted to know what benefits you've found to the North Wales Fire Authority when addressing the social partnerships and the meeting with Hannah Blything, the Deputy Minister.
Yeah, this is all linked to new legislation that is coming in through the Welsh Government in relation to social partnerships. And I think one of the benefits is that we're having this interaction between representatives from the fire services across Wales and Welsh Government officials. And although it's early stages at the moment, I'm hoping that they will be productive. I don't think that we're going to agree all of the time, but certainly we're getting around the table to discuss some very important issues moving forward with the challenges that we face as fire services and fire authorities. I don't know if the chief wants to add anything.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's actually a very good opportunity. Although we meet via Teams with the Welsh Government officials almost on a monthly basis, to be able to discuss, have all of us in the room, or at least some of us in the room and some virtually, that gives us the opportunity to discuss issues that are of commonality across the whole of the 3 fire services in Wales. And I think having that the ear of the Deputy Minister so that she can hear firsthand is really valuable. And I think in future we will see the benefits of it.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
So thank you for that question, Gareth. Any other questions or comments before I go back to the agenda? I can't see any other hands being raised. So item number 7 is the Firefighters Pay Awards and potential industrial action. Over to the Chief. Diolch yn fawr.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be able to present some good news. So as you are aware, we have for what feels like the last 6 to 8 months, preparing in case that there was going to be industrial action. And I have regularly briefed you as to the progress of the pay negotiations for firefighters and officers and control room staff who are employed on Grey Book terms and conditions. And whilst those negotiations went on, and indeed the preparations for industrial action, I was incredibly proud of how so many of our staff just prepared for this. Nobody actually wanted to take industrial action, but they showed a very professional way of preparing, whether these were people that would be taking action or those that would not. Anyway, you can see from the paper that an agreement has been met, and that pay award has been accepted, and that is now in payment. The only sad downside is the fact that there is not additional funding in Wales to meet that pay award, and as Helen will no doubt tell us later on, this means that we need to find the difference between what we put in the budget and what the actual settlement was. And that's in the region of £1 million. However, I think the fact that we are not going to be faced with the turmoil that is industrial action is really good news for all fire and rescue authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Mark Young has his hand raised. Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Diolch yn fawr. Yeah, it's just on that point. So obviously great that no industrial action is taking place, but I do find it astonishing that other people, and in this case governments, can have an agreement which costs ourselves, the authority, an extra million, over £1 million, and there's no offer of any help with the finances. I do find that astonishing. So again, it's good that no action and we've come to an agreement, but I do think it's worth a debate. And in audit, Chair, I think there was quite a feeling that yourselves should write to the relevant governments on this, because it's astonishing, isn't it? Other people have a meeting which costs £1 million extra and not an offer of an extra penny. So it was just to make that point, and obviously I think we should have a discussion on it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're absolutely right, Mark. It is frustrating and annoying, and it's something that we will be definitely taking up in our next meeting of the social partnership with the Deputy Minister, but we will see what other avenues we can also explore. Cynghorydd Gwynfor Owen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. More or less the same point, but with the report specifically to begin with, the report says comments from the executive panel or the audit panel. And then it goes on to number 7, and it only says that the chief fire officer has given an oral update to that committee, and there are no comments there. So I don't understand why the heading says comments from the audit committee or the executive committee, but the comments from those panels are not in the report. And going back to the point that Councillor Markham made now, in the audit committee, for example, comments of a very important kind were made that we needed to draw attention of various local authorities and the members of Parliament and of the Senedd to this matter. And I personally have drawn attention to our MP's attention to the matter, Liz Saville-Roberts, and she is following it up. But since the report says comments from the panels or committee, there is nothing about that in it. And I think it ought to be noted somewhere that, that we are dissatisfied, and the fact that we are referring the matter to the relevant authorities and to the members of Parliament and members of Senedd to follow up. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gwynfor, and I appreciate your comments. Of course, it is not the minutes that we have here from the committee, the audit committee, but just a summary of some comments. But I will ask the chief if she would wish to come in. Thank you, Chief.
No, I think that's a very valid point, that we should reflect the minutes more accurately in the observation section. And so we'll ensure we'll do that in the future. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
comments or questions? No, I can't see any other hands raised. So there are recommendations at paragraph 8 of the report, which says members are requested to note the acceptance of the NJC pay offer to employees and grey book terms and conditions, note the cessation of preparations for industrial action, and note the financial implications. Could I have a proposer, please? Diolch, John Brynmore. Seconder?
Happy to second them, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. Will you all show that you agree with the recommendations? Diolch yn fawr. That's unanimous. So going on to the next item on the agenda, which is the provisional outturn for 2022-23. And it's Helen MacArthur, Assistant Chief Fire Officer, will be presenting this, I think. Diolch, Helen.
Diolch, and bore da pawb. This is a standard paper that you receive it on most fire authority meetings, and it sets out the current forecast for the 2022-23 financial year, and notably was prepared as at the end of February. So currently the finance team is busy finalising the actual position, and this will be reported to members at the meeting the 17th of July, during which the draft accounts will also be presented. I think it's fair to say that this is the time when, as accountants, we work in 3 different financial years. We take the backward look into the year that we're closing, but we also deal with the existing financial year and then that future look. So if I do pause at all, it's simply to ensure that I'm actually reporting the correct financial year, as it does become somewhat confusing. The budget for 2022-23 was set in December 2021. And the net expenditure at that time that was approved was 39.41 million. And that's the amount that we have levied upon the local authorities of North Wales. Our actual expenditure is higher than that. And the reason for that is we also receive some grant funding, and we also have the opportunity of using our earmarked reserve. At that time, it was noted that there were a number of factors that were outstanding at the time of budget setting, and that these may impact on the financial year. And as we've just heard from the Chief's update, the main issue that we were facing related to pay awards for 2022-23, which hadn't been agreed by the national negotiating bodies at that time. In addition, the COVID uncertainties from previous years had also impacted on this financial year, as previously deferred projects and recruitment to vacancies commenced. To fund those deferred projects, we carry forward a number of earmarked reserves from both the 2021 and the 21-22 financial years. And this recognised that that expenditure was necessary, but hadn't progressed as planned. The challenges and uncertainties have been exacerbated this year, primarily arising from the war in Ukraine and the economic outlook, which has resulted in increases in interest rates, supply chain difficulties, and inflationary pressures. They've all converged to make the 22-23 financial year incredibly challenging. So consequently, we've had to carefully manage all expenditure to avoid that supplemental levy. And whilst I'm pleased to be able to report that we do not anticipate the need for that supplemental levy in 2022-23, this has only been achieved through the use of reserves, and the authority has an underlying deficit that we need to consider in future years. These will be addressed separately as part of the work for 23-24 and also the emergency cover review. Although members will have read the report, I will touch briefly on a number of the expenditure heads. I'll start with payroll because that does account for the vast majority of our expenditure. So I'm sure all members will be familiar, but when we set the budget, we were anticipating a 2% pay awards. These are nationally agreed, and that was the public sector planning assumption at that time. We did recognise it as a risk, and that risk has now come to fruition, not only for the firefighter and control staff pay award, but also for staff conditioned to local government terms conditions. And as the Chief has confirmed, this does put a financial pressure on us, and it has been necessary to utilise our general funds. During this financial year, we've also addressed a national legal challenge in the sector relating to the holiday pay on overtime, and this dates back 6 years, and it's been necessary to make further payments of 300,000. This was known about at the budget setting and is being funded from reserves previously established for this purpose. I think it's also important that we don't just focus on some of the cost pressures that we're experiencing, but also some of the good news stories where we've recruited 24 whole-time staff. And these are essential to sustain our services, not only today, but in the future. And that's due to known and anticipated retirements. We're also actively recruiting to firefighter posts in the retained duty system, which is also critical to our availability of fire cover across North Wales. So overall, whilst we are expecting pay to be overspent, it does include the cost of the national pay awards, although we've been able to partially mitigate these through careful management of variable pay and also vacancies. Turning to the non-pay areas, I would refer members to paragraph 15 of the report, which sets out the main areas of expenditure in table format. Our premises costs are forecast to deliver a balanced budget, primarily because we've received additional income from successful challenges to the rateable value of some of our premises. So as members will be aware, we do pay national non-domestic rates on our premises, and we have had some challenges in terms of increased costs, and where appropriate, we do put in appeals. The energy contract was renewed mid-year, and although some government support was received, an overspend in that area has been experienced. Turning to the matter of supplies, during 2020-21 and 21-22, a number of schemes were deferred. These mainly related to technical operations, and these have been progressed during this financial year. So whilst these give rise to an increase in expenditure, these costs will be met from earmarked reserves. Our expenditure on transport has exceeded the budget due to the increased cost in fuel prices and the inflationary pressures in respect of parts and third-party contracts. A particular area of focus for us this year has been the cost of borrowing. This has increased due to significant rises in our interest rates. As our authority loans are fixed term, it's been necessary to replace a number of those which have matured this year, and also to fund our new capital expenditure. And overall, this has resulted in a cost pressure. And again, this was foreseen, and there is an earmarked reserve to support this. At the time of writing this report, it's anticipated that our capital expenditure will be £2.9 million in year. And although we have noted that supply chain issues have caused some delays, notably in relation to items such as steel for new training towers, as well as contractor capacity and availability. In summary, the net expenditure will be in line with the budget set, And this will be achieved through the use of general funds, general reserves to meet the additional payroll costs, and also earmarked reserves to fund projects that we've previously deferred. I must stress, though, that these figures are very much provisional at this current time, and the finance team is working to produce the annual accounts. So normally these are produced in draft format by the end of May and audited by the end of July. And since writing this report, we've received notification from Audit Wales that it doesn't actually have the capacity to achieve these timescales, and it's been communicated that a revised audit deadline of the end of November for all local authorities and fire authorities is in place. The end of May deadline is always a significant challenge, especially for a small team such as ours, and therefore members will receive the final draft accounts at its meeting on the 19th of July. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions on the report from members.
Thank you, Helen. Any questions from members for Helen, please? Dafydd, dych chi eisiau dod I fewn fel y trysoedd?
Did you want to come in, David, as treasurer? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since none of the members have come in, I would just like to thank Helen, the two Helens, in fact, for being able to report so promptly after the 31st of March. There's been a good deal of work to get these figures in place and to get the report out in such a timely fashion. I would like to note that the service has succeeded in putting a brake on the over-expenditure. We foresaw an expenditure of 42.4 million during the year, and that has been reined back and reduced down to 41.4 million by the end of the year. That is the provisional figure, as it were. The overspend, as Helen explained, is entirely inevitable because of the pay inflation. We're all aware of that the pay awards are backdated and other inflation. The things that last year, such as fuel prices and energy prices last year, everybody is familiar with that from their world outside of the authority. Of course, this paper looks back, and we shall have to use the funds, the provisions and the balances in order to balance the year concerned, 22 to 23, and we would ask for your approval for that in order to be able to move forward to close the accounts in an orderly manner. In using the balances and the reserves, of course, there is less available for the future. As Helen says, we are looking forward to not raising an additional levy during the year, but that will leave us, as we reported in last meeting, that will leave us somewhat short if there were to be any big event that were to hit us during that year. That we hope that won't happen, of course, but looking ahead again and echoing what Gwynfor was saying, I think, in the previous item, it's important for us all to communicate with our members of parliament and our local authorities, where we are all representatives, and we need to take the message back that the pressures on the current year now for the future are heavy, and we shall have, because we have used the balances and reserves to close last year, we will be using the balances and reserves in order to balance the year that we have just begun. So for the following year, it's inevitable that there will either be significant cuts or there will be a significant increase in the levy for 24 to 25. And we need to have get that reality across to our colleagues in the local authorities and in government, I think. Thank you very much, David.
Any questions or comments from members? If I could just make one observation, paragraph 19 in the report reads, the overtime costs associated with maintaining service availability and to cover sickness are expected to be £900,000 at year end. I'm aware that the service closely monitors sickness absence and has strategies in place to deal with that. But as members, we don't actually get any management information in relation to sickness figures. And I've discussed that with the chief. And from next month going forward, in terms of performance monitoring, we will get sickness returns as part of that management information, just so that we can satisfy ourselves as to what's going on. So that's just for the information of members. Any observations or questions before I move to the recommendations? No, then if I can turn to paragraph 5 of the report, which deals with the recommendations. Members are asked to note the draft revenue and capital outturn projections for 2022-23 financial year as detailed within the report. Note the risks associated with inflation and supply chain issues. Note the risks associated with the ongoing pay negotiations, and approve the use of earmarked and general fund reserves. Could I have a proposer, please?
Happy to propose,
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you. The Deputy Chair got his hand up pretty quickly as well. Thank you, Paul. Will you show, please, that you agree with those recommendations? That's carried. Diolch yn fawr, Helen. So going on to the next item, which is the item 9, the annual review of the authority's corporate plan 2021-24, and over to Deputy Chief Fire Officer Stuart Forshaw. Thank you, Stuart.
Diolch, Chair. Bore da pawb. Good morning, everybody. So this item, members, presents you with an updated corporate plan 21 to 24 for approval following its annual review. To provide members with the background in the development of the Fire Authority's corporate plan, in March 2021, the authority published a 3-year corporate plan which ran from 2021 to 2024, in which it sets out its 7 long-term improvements and well-being objectives and the actions that it proposed to take in the first year of 21-22. In October 2022, members agreed that the improvements and well-being objectives would remain unchanged for the final year of this corporate plan 23-24, which we're entering now. Therefore, the 23-24 corporate plan has been updated to include the actions achieved in 22-23, along with the priorities against each objective for its final year. The revised draft plan was presented to the Fire Authority Exec Panel on the 20th of March this year, and comments from that meeting have now been included in the final version of the plan, which is included in your pack. Key challenges for the authority as it moves into the final year, 23-24, remain, and those relate to the availability of our on-call fire crews, maintenance and development of firefighter skills, and having sufficient corporate capacity to meet current and future demand. Therefore, the authority's 23-24 annual plan, which is now incorporated into 21-24 corporate plan, continues to confirm the authority's long-term improvements and our well-being objectives, outline what actions are planned to be achieved or progressed by the North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, reflect the key challenges facing the authority, including the 3 that were clarified for the Chief Fire Officer's situational assessment, take into account Audit Wales findings and recommendations, and consider the recommendations from the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor for Wales's thematic reviews. It also considers the ongoing work of the Public Services Boards, especially with objectives aligned to the authority's own plans, and ensures preparedness for any future amendments arising from an updated national framework, and any additional recommendations from the Wellbeing of Future Generation Commissioner's Office. And finally, it aligns with the authority's revenue budget, capital plan, and the medium-term financial plan. So members are asked to note the refreshed appearance of the 23-24 corporate plan annual review in comparison to previous years. Note that the data contained within it is subject to final audit, though members would have received item 9B, which includes some of that missing data from the report, and that will be included before it's published. And finally, approve the publication on the service website of this 23-24 corporate plan. Diolch yn fawr, thank you everyone, and Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stuart, and members will be aware that a lot of this information isn't new, it is an updated plan. Are there any questions or comments, please? Councillor Mark Young, first of all. Diolch, Mark.
Thank you, Jochen Vow, and thank you, Stuart. It's just obviously it's the communication. It's a lot of data, and I think it goes towards showing people what they get for the money. So I just wonder how we communicate the data here. Are we doing that well enough? And just some feedback on that, because I think it's really important so the community and partners understand what they're getting from the service. So any comments on that, Stuart, would be helpful, Jochen Vow.
Well, thanks for the question, Councillor Young. As mentioned, it is published on our website. And as you know, we will be undertaking some consultation meetings with various stakeholders, members of the public, regarding our emergency cover review. So there'll be an opportunity there, I would have thought, to maybe clarify how the service is funded, how it is seen as good value for money, and at the same time communicate some of the content which is included in the plan. So we'll take that forward. Thanks for that comment.
Councillor Gareth Sandilands.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great report to read, and it shows to the public how clearly good value for money the fire service is. This essential service. How does the data relate to the other authorities of a similar size and nature? I'm beginning to find out that fire authorities aren't always the same, and everything's different in each authority. But how do we compare, especially when it comes to, say, false alarms? I noticed there's a dramatic increase in false alarms, and I'd be keen to see what other authorities have done in good practice to reduce that, and perhaps that we can follow suit and get rid of those, get the false alarm rates dropping. Certainly, thank you.
So, is there a question there about can you find
Yeah,
out?
so how are we gonna how do we compare on, say, false alarms in comparison with other authorities? Are we rising? Is there something going on in North Wales that causes people to raise false alarms more? And is there a way of how are we tackling that? Because it's a huge issue. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thanks for the question. I think as part of our performance monitoring, you know, the authority gets information around all areas of performance that we monitor, and fire alarms is one of those. And as previously highlighted in those performance reports, we have noticed an increase in false alarms. They generally are within both non-domestic and domestic settings. And recently as well, members will remember that Audit Wales also came in and looked at false alarms from automatic fire detection as an area of focus, but also across the whole of Wales. And we're waiting for that report, and that will show some comparisons, I guess, to the other fire and rescue services in Wales. But what I can do is, if it is something of interest, we can maybe look to pull something together to show you how we compare to other services, because I haven't got that information to hand now. Okay. And that could be something that we could provide.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Well, you'll be pleased to know, Stuart, that this report has generated a lot of attention, because I can see lots of hands being raised. So the next one is Councillor Brian Apsey, and then Concoy David Jones. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. I might be a bit early because I was going to thank Stuart for his report and move the recommendation. So if you want to leave that before other people speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. David?
Mr. Cadeirydd. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have is about the indicators, the statutory indicators here, and assuming perhaps that the figures that were significantly lower in 2020-21 because of the effects of the pandemic, I assume. The question I have, and forgive me, since I am a new member and don't know this information, how do the figures as we currently stand compare with the pre-pandemic period? It seems to have risen significantly for that reason, I assume, but where are we compared with where we were before 2020-21?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Jones. As mentioned, the kind of the more detailed information for performance is contained within the the performance reporting, the performance monitoring reports that we bring to authority every quarter, and you'll be getting to the the end of year report, which will be coming to the next authority when the authority meets again. You're right in what you're saying. There was a reduction in certain types of incidents during the pandemic, especially those related to transport and road networks, but we are seeing a reduction in accidental dwelling fires and injuries and deaths related to those types of incidents, which is a real positive. And there's various factors why that may be. There's also an increase during the previous year as well in incidents in what we call special service incidents. So they're non-related fires, non-fire related incidents, if you like, and that was following a conscious decision taken by the service to be more visible in the community, but also help our partners working within the other emergency services at some of the incidents that they would require our help. So it is difficult to kind of identify trends. Things change all the time, but the more detailed information before 2020-21 will be included in the performance monitoring report when you receive that. Okay, thank you.
Can I just take this opportunity to congratulate the service, because I think for the first time in a number of years, this last year, there was no deaths recorded through fire in North Wales at all. So that's a really pleasing, positive statistic. Councillor Jeff Evans. Jeff?
Unmute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to applaud the North Wales Fire and Rescue Service in some actions they are taking to prevent false alarms, etc., etc. I actually went shopping to B&M in the last week and noted a fire engine outside there doing some sterling work to get the public to adhere to certain rules should they want to place fires in their gardens, etc., to which they were getting a lot of false alarms, and for the public to notify the North Wales Fire and Rescue Service in advance should they want to put a fire in their garden. So it was good to see, and I think the public valued seeing that they were doing some sterling work in that area.
Thank you, Jeff, for that positive feedback, which I'm sure is much appreciated. Councillor Nigel Smith. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the false alarms. It's concerning that a fifth of our calls are false, and I would welcome a report coming to audit to try and understand whether they're malicious false alarms or whether they're just automatically generated by equipment. Be interesting to understand that more.
Thank you, Nigel. I think the Chief wants to come in.
Yes, I think we could certainly bring that, but also alongside that, we are expecting the report from Audit Wales comparing how we have approached automatic attendance to automatic fire alarms, and they have been undertaking a piece of work, as I think you're aware, comparing what policies are in place, because we do call challenge. We make sure that we don't just automatically send attendance to every call, and that we've actually seen a reduction in attendance to AFAs over the last it's over 10 years since we've had that policy in place. So for Councillor Smith's and everybody else's benefit, that report is due to come to the July Fire Authority meeting, and alongside that we can bring an internal report detailing what we are currently doing to manage these numbers of incidents. Can I also use the opportunity to just emphasise the fantastic news that we had no accidental dwelling fire deaths in North Wales this year, this last financial year. We have never had that before, and that's the culmination of work by the whole service since 2009, when under the previous chief, we pivoted the service to be a prevention service, And on the back of what was then known as the Chief Officer's Task Group report, we started emphasising that prevention was better than cure. And we've seen gradually over that period of time, the number of deaths in accidental dwelling fires reduce and reduce. I'm not saying we'll be able to keep it at 0, but I think this is an amazing achievement for the whole service.
Thank you, Chief. And obviously, as this is as this meeting is being recorded for the public, let's hope that the press pick up on this good news story and run with it. In terms of sort of the false alarms, I don't know, Mike Whiteley, Mike, if you want to say anything at this stage, or is it premature as the report hasn't been released yet?
Thank you, Chair. I haven't had sight even of a draft report yet, so unfortunately I don't have anything to feedback at this stage.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Mike. So I can't see any other hands raised. So Councillor Brian Apsley has already proposed the recommendations. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. Will you show that you accept the recommendations? That's carried. Thank you, Stuart. So going on to the next item, which is item 10, the Public Service Board's Wellbeing Plans. And it's back to you, Helen, I think, who's presenting this.
Thank you very much, Chair. A very brief item. This paper relates to the wellbeing plans for Ynys Môn and Gwynedd, Conwy and Denbighshire, and Flintshire and Wrexham. They were considered and endorsed by the executive panel at its meeting of the 20th of March, and the recommendation from that panel to the Fire Authority was that for approval. But we have a very brief background. The authority is a statutory member of the Public Service Boards for North Wales, and the other statutory members include local authorities, NHS colleagues, NRW, as well as co-opted members such as North Wales Police and housing associations. Every 5 years, the PSB is required to undertake a wellbeing assessment of its communities, to identify the challenges being faced, and to also to put forward a wellbeing plan. So the results of that assessment inform the wellbeing plan, and that wellbeing plan is really ensures that framework of direction for the PSB over the next 5 years. So the reports in the pack today cover the period 2023 through to 2028. Worth noting that the PSB doesn't have a dedicated budget in its own right, but each partner is expected to align its own work to consider the priorities established by the PSB. And more importantly, work collaboratively, both to understand the priorities and to deliver against the wellbeing plan. The wellbeing plans have been revised and refreshed for each of the North Wales PSBs, and they're included in the pack today for approval. So I'm happy to take any questions, and the recommendation is that the Fire Authority endorses and approves these. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And members obviously will be familiar with their own local wellbeing plans. It was quite interesting looking at them across North Wales, that there are similar objectives, but there are also differing objectives as well. Cynghorydd Gwynfor Owen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make the comment, what struck me as very strange in the report, in the legal section, it says that the service has a legal duty to approve these wellbeing plans. So this is a report that we have no choice as to whether we wish to or not. We must support it. And I just see that as a very strange report, that's all, to put before us. If we have no choice, well, then we must do so. And what's the point of even discussing it? I just wanted to make that comment. And also, I have no choice. We must accept that's another matter.
This report has been considered by the executive panel and who have endorsed the recommendations. So do we have a proposal that we accept the recommendations? Diolch Arwyn, a seconder. Thank you, Nigel. Will you all show? Diolch yn fawr. That's passed. So the next item on the agenda is item 11, which is the annual pay policy statement 2023-24. Back to you again, Helen, please. Diolch.
Thank you. This is my final paper on the agenda today, and again another paper that has been through the executive panel. It's an annual document, and it's required to be published before the commencement of the financial year, which is why it went to the executive panel. And it's also a requirement under the Localism Act, and coupled with guidance from the Welsh Government, its overall aim is to provide transparency with regards to the pay for all employees. I won't go through the report line by line, but I will highlight a number of aspects that I believe are important and draw those to the attention of yourselves. So within section 3.2, this highlights that for all staff groups, we use national pay scales where they exist and advocate the collective bargaining arrangements. This includes both the cost of living annual review, which we've discussed in previous reports today. Within sections 4, 5 and 6, these deal with the arrangements for the remuneration of the Chief Fire Officer and senior staff. That includes the Principal Officer team and also the Monitoring Officer and the Treasurer. National pay scales do not exist for these roles, and salaries are benchmarked periodically against the sector averages. So notably, we don't pay any bonus for performance-related pay for any staff. That includes both the Chief Fire Officer and all of our senior staff. Section 9 provides the reader with a summary table of all of our employee groups, and this includes both the terms and conditions of service and also their pension arrangements. Part of the requirement for this report is to demonstrate the pay differentials across the staff groups. Our lowest paid employee receives an equivalent of £21,189 per annum, and that is as at April 2022. So whilst that will be subject to the pay award for 2023 when it's agreed, I can confirm that that's above the real living wage. The pay multiple for the CFO is 1 to 6.59, and that's within the spirit of the Hutton Review, which set a maximum multiple of 20 times. The multiple with the median full-time staff is 1 to 4.33. For all of our staff, we provide a range of support measures, and that includes such things as access to physiotherapy, corporate discounts, and employee assistance packages. Across the public sector, there has been some concern about individuals being engaged via personal service companies, and that's also known as off-payroll arrangements. And I can confirm that we don't routinely employ individuals in that mechanism. Where it is necessary, we undertake the full due diligence in terms of the taxation arrangements. In particular, I would refer members to the appendices, which set out salary scales applicable to all staff. I'm happy to take any queries or concerns or questions in relation to the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. So just to reiterate to members, this has been to the executive panel who have approved the report, and it is an annual statement that we have to, by law, approve, but the actual policy is unchanged from last year. I think it's worth emphasising. Concur with Owen Herold?
Hello, no, sorry, mistake on that.
Hello, I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay. Councillor Nigel Smith, Nigel?
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 105, I think it's 5.2, the remuneration of chief officers appointed. At the end, it says a car will be provided in order for them to carry out the roles. And I just wondered whether, in these financial times, I don't know of, I don't think in local authorities our chief officers are given a car to carry out their role. And I just wonder whether that's something we ought to perhaps be looking at audit going forward, the costs of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. And as chair of the audit committee, I'm sure that's something that you'll pick up on. I don't know if any of the SLT want to respond to that comment or not. I don't see any hands going up. Chief?
I feel a bit uncomfortable answering on behalf of myself. I think what would be useful for members if maybe through the audit committee we explain the national terms and conditions of principal officers, and then you will understand where that comes from, and then that might make more help you in your decision making, because it does form part of the pay package of all principal officers. But we'll take that as an agenda item and bring that information to the audit committee.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Chair, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. In the past, we've had a chief officer who's an operational chief officer, and for a chief officer who might have to go to incidents, major incidents, they may have to go at a blue light. So, you know, I can't see any problem with a chief officer having a car. That's all I've got to say. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised, so can I have somebody to propose that we do note and accept the report? So approve the report. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Michelle. Will you show, please? That's passed. So item number 12, the Standards Committee Annual Report. And I think it's over to you, Gareth. Borodar.
Borodar Pawb, diolch Cadeirydd.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman.
This is the 18th annual report, as it says, of the Standards Committee, and the previous 17 reports have all been issued as a matter of good practice on behalf of the Standards Committee. This is the first year that a statutory duty exists upon Standards Committees to report in this way. So this is actually their first statutory report, noting that it's taken 17 years for for the legislation to catch up with us as a fire authority. Members can see the matters included within the report. I'll pick out key highlights only, if I might. One of the key things that the Standards Committee one of the key pieces of work that the Standards Committee undertakes, because there are so few complaints about members of this authority in particular, but fire authorities in general, the work has to be proactive. So they look through and they undertake a rolling review of the Constitution, reviewing key codes and protocols once per council term, once per authority term, to make sure that they remain up to date and pertinent. And the committee has now set a work programme for it to carry out all of those reviews between now and 2027. In addition to that, the committee has resolved to try and meet informally with yourself, the Vice Chair of the authority, and the Chair and Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, in order to, I suppose, to ensure that the work of the Standards Committee itself is directed appropriately, to see whether, as members, you feel there are any issues within the authority that need to be addressed, and whether it needs to focus its attention in any particular areas. And whilst they're not losing their impartiality, they're just trying to make sure that they're as thoroughly embedded into the work of the authority as they might be in doing so. We will be continuing, or the committee will be continuing, its practice of independent members attending meetings of the fire authority, different bodies, to view the work of those committees, checking matters such as compliance with the code, declarations of interest and so on, and reporting back, in order that they have first-hand experience of how the authority is participating, is run, and how its members participate. And I think perhaps importantly as well, as this is the first year following elections, the committee received a report about the training of authority members on the code. We have received confirmation that all members received primary training on the code at their constituent councils, and indeed we then did some fire authority specific training at the 2 induction sessions that we ran, and all but 6 members were able to attend those sessions. So, Chair, other than that, some of the issues within the report they're there because they have to be. They're now prescribed in the form of the annual report, and it just details the number of meetings, the members of the committee, and so on. But I think those are the key points. I'm happy to take any questions if there are on either the issues that I've raised or any parts of the report that I haven't covered.
Thank you, Gareth. Are there any questions or comments for Gareth, please? No, in that case, can we move to the recommendation, which is simply that we note the annual report? Can I have somebody to propose, please? I think it was a dead heat between Nigel and the deputy chair, so we'll take Nigel as proposing, the deputy chair as seconding. Hope that doesn't upset you, Paul. Really show your hands, please. Right. Thank you, that's passed. So back to you again, Gareth, for the next item, please, which is the reappointment of independent members to serve on the authority's standards committee.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that the Standards Committee consists of a number of what are termed within the legislation as independent members. These are people who are co-opted onto the authority following an initial open advertisement and recruitment process. We appointed 2 members whose term of office is due to expire in August of this year. They are Jill Murgatroyd and Gareth Pritchard. Their first term of office has come to an end, and they are entitled to serve one more term should we wish to do so, or able to serve one more term should we wish to reappoint them. As an authority, we are able to reappoint members without going through the advertisement process again, but we can only do that once. Should you wish to reappoint Jill and Gareth, then at the end of their term in 2027, we will have to carry out a fresh advertisement process to recruit 2 new members to the committee. We have spoken informally to both Jill Murgatroyd and Gareth Pritchard to understand whether they would be willing to serve again if reappointed, and they have indicated that they would be happy to do so. So, Chair, the question is, would the authority wish to reappoint those 2 members?
I would suspect that the authority doesn't want to spend money on advertising when we don't need to advertise. I can Howard Gwynfor Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It might surprise you to hear me say that I'm not happy at all with this report, not because of the principle of the report, not because of the names, but if I can say what happened in Gwynedd Council, and the consequence of that is that Gwynedd have changed the way they present the report. I very nearly did not declare an interest to reappoint a member, although I had a very strong financial link with that person because it was only the name there. Now, we have 2 names here, Jill Murgatroyd and Gareth Pritchard, but I don't think that I know Jill Murgatroyd, but I know Gareth Pritchard, quite a number of Gareth Pritchards. I don't know if it's one of the Gareth Pritchards I know or not. So I have no idea whether I ought to declare an interest on this report or not. And so that's a problem for me. I think that we ought to have more information about the people, who they are exactly, but also what expertise they have to do this function, and rather than just saying, oh yes, let's reappoint them, are they appropriate people for the job? I have no idea. And so I just think we ought to have a lot more information, and without knowing any more about who these people are, I cannot see how I can vote in favor. And it may be that I am breaking the rules on declaring an interest in doing so. Thank you, Gwynfor. I think you make a very valid point here, and perhaps the information would have been available during the last term, but of course we have new members, and I must admit that I know Gareth Pritchard well, and I'm not sure if I must declare an interest. So, Gareth, any observations, please?
Indeed, Chair, it's a fair point. When we do the appointments, we put up a pen portrait so that members are able, because we have an interview panel who see the candidates, they then select the favoured candidates, and we put up a pen portrait so that the authority understands and can have some assurance around the appointments that they're making. Many people will know Gareth Pritchard because, of course, he was Deputy Chief Constable for a time at North Wales Police. For Councillor Owen, if any of the Gareth Pritchards he knows were Deputy Chief Constable, and it's the same one, quite possibly not, though, because it might be quite a common name. We have the pen portraits, Chair. We have until August, so I'm happy to circulate. I think we have an authority meeting in July, at which we could make the reappointment, noting that if we don't, then of course we'd have very little time left in which to carry out an advertising process. But I'm sure there'd be a way of making a temporary appointment whilst we advertise. So give the authority those two options. They can appoint on the strength that these people have been through a recruitment process, have been recommended once already, and the authority might wish to to take that on trust, as it were, and reappoint. Alternatively, if the authority wishes, we can bring back the pen portraits to the next meeting of the authority, so that members have that information. Unfortunately, Chair, what we can't do is delegate this decision in the interim, because it is a decision that only the full authority can make. It's not one that can be delegated, I'm afraid, at all.
Thank you, Gareth, for that explanation. And on the point, if we do know the candidates personally, do we have to declare an interest?
In relation to Gareth Pritchard, I suspect a number of councillors might know him in his guise in his former guise as the Deputy Chief Constable. That would probably be on a professional basis rather than on a personal basis. If, however, people were to know him in a private or a personal capacity as a friend, then yes, they would need to declare an interest. And Chair, I will, of course, note down that we give more information, perhaps in the form of a confidential set of notes that we don't need to refer to, that are nevertheless confidential, so that members can decide whether or not they need to declare an interest in future.
Thank you, Gareth. In that case, I will declare an interest, because I know Gareth both professionally and personally, so I won't take any part in the vote. Councillor Nigel Smith. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. Well, as Gareth rightly pointed out, these people have already been through the process of interviewing and have served the authority for a number of years. I'm more than happy to approve or propose the recommendation of their reappointment. I don't know either of the candidates. With Gareth, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing with his former profession, but I would be more than happy to propose that they're reappointed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Councillor Brian Apsley. Brian?
Yes, Chair. I would support the words that Nigel just spoken. We should have confidence in the decision made by our colleagues, and these people have already got that experience. Why would we put ourselves in a position of going to adverts, etc., when a big majority of the fire authority members are still in place when that decision was made? Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Gwynfor, ydych chi eisiau dod nôl?
Did you want to come back, Gwynfor, please? Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to correct the last point, the majority of the members of the authority I knew, the majority were not there as part of the previous process. So having said that, having received the further report from Gareth, I am very happy to accept that we move ahead now and reappoint these two members. Thank you for that. Can I ask that Gareth note what I have raised? And he has said that he will do so for the next report. So thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for raising the point.
We have a proposal, we have a seconder, as per the recommendation, that we do reappoint Jill Murgatroyd and Gareth Pritchard. Will you show if you're in favour, please? Okay, that's passed. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. So on to item 14, which is the progress report on the emergency cover review. And I think it's ACFO Stuart Millington who's presenting this. Go ahead, Stuart.
Good morning, everyone.
This report provides members with an overview of why it's necessary for us to undertake a review of emergency cover, as well as providing an update of the progress made in working groups so far. So in 2021, Audit Wales made a recommendation as part of their review of corporate resilience in North Wales Fire and Rescue Authority to review station locations and identify opportunities to optimise emergency response arrangements. And in addition to this, and during the Chief Fire Officer's situational assessment, one of the key risks identified was in relation to the difficulties in securing sufficient firefighter availability in rural locations that rely on on-call firefighters who are conditioned to the retained duty system. As you know, only 8 of our 44 fire stations are staffed by full-time firefighters, with over 80% of the service's fire engines being staffed by on-call firefighters. Members will recall from previous sessions the challenges that are associated with operating the retained duty system, and that this is not only a local challenge, but is one that's replicated nationally. Members will also recall a recent decision following it becoming increasingly difficult to maintain the previously agreed minimum response model without incurring high costs, to pilot an operating model where a minimum of 18 strategically located fire appliances will be guaranteed each day instead of the previous number of 20. The authorities previously agreed for an emergency cover review to be undertaken, and the service subsequently commissioned an independent company who have previously carried out this work in fire and rescue services across the country. They were asked to examine our current emergency response model and consider where it may be possible for improvements to be made. Using extensive data sets, including previous incident data, population data, demographics, road networks, and other current or potential future risks, ORH, which is the external contractor, have been able to develop a suite of options for consideration in the working group sessions that took place on the 14th of March and on the 4th of April. The paper within your packs describes the 4 potential models that were presented in the most recent working group on the 4th of April. And these were a model that would maintain the current station profile with an increase of up to 3 additional day staff locations that would require an increase in costs. A model that would maintain our existing station locations, but would redistribute existing staff and allow for an increase of 5-day staff stations whilst being cost neutral. Thirdly, a model that would also keep existing station locations, but redistribute existing staff and would allow for an increase of 3-day staff stations, as well as making some savings. And finally, a model that keeps our current whole-time station locations and includes 1 additional day staff location, but would close 5 on-call stations in various locations across North Wales. And this model would also realise some savings. So members who attended the working group debated all of these models, as well as other combinations, before asking ORH to go away and do some work and some more work around a reduced suite of 3 options that are a blend of the 4 options that are originally presented. The work that will now follow will be to consider all implications and costs associated with the 3 options that were presented for consideration to the next workshop sessions on the 2nd of May. And following this session, it's the intention to bring a recommendation about the preferred model to go out to public consultation to the full Fire and Rescue Authority meeting in July. So members are requested to note the contents of this report, as well as the progress made in the working group. And Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. So just to emphasise to members, this is a progress report. So we're not here to actually make any decisions on the recommendations or sorry, any decisions on the options that are listed in the report today. So any questions or comments for Stuart, please? Chief, do you want to come in?
Yes, I just wanted to emphasise what you've said about there's no decisions being made at this meeting, or indeed there will be a paper coming to the next executive panel, which will explore in more detail some of these options. But again, that is not for decision making. It's simply to recommend what the Fire Authority might decide to go out to public consultation. The intention is that any options that members wish to explore with the public should be out to consultation over July and August and into September. And then with that information, we will be able to make decisions not only to improve fire cover in North Wales, but also that it will have an impact on our budget setting in the autumn. So, this is very much a sort of letting you and the public know that we are working on a number of ideas and concepts. It is not to say that these are the concepts that we will be consulting upon.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Mark Young. Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Jock Chair. So I just wondered whether we needed to share who is on the working group. So it was just your thoughts on that, Chair. So I think the name should be there, but there might be a reason why they're not. So just would like some input on that, please.
I don't see any problem at all in terms of us in future, yes, putting the names down. I agree with that. And just to remind everybody, we've sought to have one representative from each local authority across North Wales, so that there's 6 representatives on each working group. Although we are missing a couple, and I'll come on to that and in the next 2 reports. Gareth?
I was just going to say, Chair, that the members of the Emergency Fire Cover Working Group are yourself and the Vice Chair, Councillor Cunningham. Then we have Councillor Mark Jones from Wrexham, Nigel Smith from Conwy, Arwyn Harold-Roberts from Gwynedd, and Mark Young from Denbighshire.
Thank you, Gareth. Any other comments or questions before we move to the recommendation? No, so the recommendation is quite simply that we note the progress report at this stage. Can I have somebody to propose, please? Thank you, Deputy Chair. I think Brian Apsley, you were second. So will you show that you accept the reports, please? That's great. Thank you very much, December. So item 15 is the Environmental Strategy 2023 to 2030 and the report on the progress of that working group. And I think it's you again, Stuart, please.
This report seeks to provide an update in relation to the progress made in the Environmental and Sustainability Working Group. As members know, the Environment Wales Act 2016 sets out an ambition for net zero carbon emissions across Wales by 2050, but that this ambition was taken a stage further by Welsh Government as they aspire for public sector bodies, including fire and rescue services, to be carbon neutral by 2030. In addition to Welsh Government requirements, the service are signatories to the Emergency Services Environment and Sustainability Group commitments, and these 6 commitments can be seen in section 8 of the report. Similarly to how members will have experienced in their own constituent authorities, carbon emissions are reported and aligned under 3 scope categories, these being scope 1, direct emissions, and these are the emissions from vehicles or from gas burning heating systems. Scope 2, which are the indirect emissions. Currently, this relates to our electricity supplies. And Scope 3, also indirect emissions, but this is being in relation to our supply chain. The overarching environmental strategy that we seek to develop will set out how we'll quantify our carbon reduction against each of the 3 areas of scope, as well as describing our key performance indicators and the subordinate plans or strategies that will be required in order to achieve carbon zero status by 2030. The current thinking in relation to what these strategies and plans relate to can be seen in section 13 of the report and include a social value and sustainable procurement strategy, a fleet decarbonisation plan, a waste reduction strategy, a heating decarbonisation plan, a power decarbonisation plan. In the working group that was held on the 4th of April, members considered the contents of our overarching strategy that will include sections in relation to measuring progress, sustainability in the community, sustainable procurement, energy consumption, water consumption, operational activities, waste and recycling, fleet and biodiversity. The discussion and direction provided in the working group has enabled our environmental and sustainability manager, Tim Christensen, to pull together a first draft of the environmental strategy for 2023 to 2030. And this draft was shared with working group members on Friday afternoon. Working group members will now be able to consider the contents of any amendments before the next working group scheduled for Tuesday, the 2nd of May. In addition to considering the draft strategy, the next working group will begin to examine the contents and approach that we wish to take to achieve carbon neutrality in our fleet decarbonisation plan. Finally, I'd like to draw your attention to an amendment to the paper in section 14, and following feedback from members in the last working group, the sessions on Tuesday the 2nd of May and Wednesday the 31st of May are both now morning sessions and will begin at 9 o'clock in the morning rather than 1400 that's shown in the paper. So members are asked to note the progress made towards the completion of the draft environmental strategy for 2023 to 2030. And Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. Any questions or comments for Stuart, please? Councillor Michelle Walker. Michelle?
Hiya. I was just want to say that I was unable to attend the last meeting, but I will be there on the 2nd of May at 9 AM.
Thank
and
you,
I've read
Michelle.
the minutes from that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Can I point out that we are missing one representative from the Wrexham local authority? So can I please encourage the Wrexham members to get together, or for somebody to put their name forward to be on this working group, which I think is very important. And you can perhaps, oh, Beverly, are you putting your name forward, please, Beverly?
No, I'm not, Chair. What I am doing is referring to an email that was sent on the 14th of April from Matthew Foster in our monitoring service, advising that these decisions for the monitoring working groups are currently with the leader of the council. And as soon as he's made a decision, he will be informing the fire authority. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Beverly, because we also need a representative from Wrexham for the training centre working group as well, which is the next item on the agenda. But I may be wrong here, but I think that the actual decisions are taken by the fire authority. Gareth, do you want to come in there?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as an authority, we do invite constituent councils to make nominations to some bodies within the authority. So, for example, the members of the Executive Panel and Audit Committee, we invite authorities to make those nominations specifically, but not all. So, for example, the Standards Committee is, the appointments to that are made entirely by the Fire Authority itself. And certainly for informal working groups, those are matters within the gift of the Fire Authority rather than constituent councils. And I have sent a response to Mr. Foster this morning.
Thank you for that, Gareth. But obviously the important thing is that we have a representative from Wrexham and both these other two working groups. Michelle, do you want to come in, please?
Sorry, that might be an old hand.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can't see any other hands raised, so the report is just for noting at this stage. Can I have somebody to propose, please?
Chair,
Chair, Chris Hughes. Yeah.
I'm happy to propose. I just wanted to, but I also wanted to thank Stuart and Tim for the excellent presentations they give and the support that they gave members at the environmental strategy meeting, which was very, I think, engaged everybody in the discussion. It was a really inspiring discussion, I think, and will certainly lead to some further robust discussions over the coming months. So I'm very much happy to propose that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Chris, and thank you for that positive feedback. Do I have a seconder, please? I think David won that race. Diolch yn fawr, David. Will you show, please, that you note the report? Diolch yn fawr. And then the last item on the agenda is the update on the new training centre working group, DCFO, Stuart Forshaw. Diolch, Stuart.
Diolch, Chair. So, members, the purpose of this report is to provide you with an update on the work undertaken of the production of the detailed business case for the new Fire and Rescue Training Centre in North Wales. As we've previously discussed, the authority is committed to the provision of essential operational training to its staff to support service delivery and importantly, firefighter safety. And also discussed, the Chief Fire Officer undertook an assessment during 2021, which identified training as a priority area for the authority, and approval was given to undertake a full review on the future delivery of operational training and development in the service. This review has included a look at our current operational training facilities, including the firehouse located in Dolgellau, which, although continues to be used for operational training, it requires significant investment to extend its medium-term lifespan for risk-critical breathing apparatus and firefighter tactics training, and this cannot be considered a long-term option. It's also located in an area of North Wales, which is a considerable distance for the majority of our staff to travel and attend breathing apparatus courses. Fire contaminants is also a risk to our staff, and that's found in the smoke and the toxic flammable gases released during fires, and it may contribute to cancer and other health conditions in firefighters. So the management of fire contaminants needs to be included in a new training and development centre design. And though we've put interim measures in place in Dolgellau, the long-term management of fire contaminants is a health and safety concern. The review also considered the training provision delivered from Rhyl Fire Station, and it's identified the need to invest in new training development facilities to ensure firefighter operational preparedness and safety in the future. In particular, there's a need to provide practical and immersive training experiences across a range of scenarios that operational crews may be required to deal with at any time in their response roles. The review of operational training facilities in the service also supports the findings of the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor's thematic review of operational training within the Welsh Fire and Rescue Services, which recognises the need for significant capital investment required to replicate real-world conditions for firefighters to develop and refresh their operational skills. To mitigate these risks, operational training and development for our staff in realistic and immersive training environments, which include adequate health and safety measures, needs to be at the forefront of training and development centre design to provide essential facilities for at least the next 25 years in North Wales. Following approval by the authority on the 17th of October 2022 to allocate a budget for the development of a detailed business case for the new training development centre, a number of options have been explored by the project team. This work has included the identification of a suitable piece of land to locate a new training and development centre in Denbighshire. The authority has now entered into an exclusivity agreement with the landowner to enable the relevant surveys, suitability assessments and discussions with local planning officers prior to the submission of an outline planning application, which is anticipated to take approximately 6 months and conclude with the presentation of the business case for land purchase to the Fire Authority on the 23rd of October this year. A budget for land purchase has been included in the Fire Authority's 23-24 budget, with its use conditional to members' approval following the production of the robust business case. Separate to the land purchase, the detailed business case for the new training development centre is scheduled to be completed for July this year. And again, this will be brought to members for further scrutiny and approval at that time. Members will be kept updated and informed on the progress of the project as it develops during the preceding months, with a recommendation that a working group should be created and include a Fire Authority member from each of the constituent council. Therefore, recommendations include that members note the background to the review of the fire and rescue training facilities in North Wales, note that the current training provision is reaching the end of its life, note that the next stage of the project is commenced to confirm suitability of the identified land, note the timescale set out in the report and the provision of a detailed business case for members' consideration, and identify members for each constituent council to form a working group to help develop and scrutinise plans for the new training centre. And since this report was presented to the Fire Authority Committee and drafted, 5 members have now joined a working group which met for the first time last week. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Stuart. So as I said previously, we're waiting one representative from Wrexham to join that working group. And just to reiterate, we as members haven't made a decision to have a new training centre. We've made a decision that we want to look at a business case for a new training centre before making any final decision. Councillor Gareth Sandilands to begin with. Thank you, Gareth.
Diolch, Chair. We met as a working group last week, and I was really happy to see that we both got the expertise and the thorough questioning of this. it looks like quite an exciting proposal. And now as a member, I personally understand the reasons why we must move ahead and get a new training centre, and hopefully it will be value for money in the future, to rest assured. But I'm happy to propose the report that's just gone forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Before we move to a vote, there are some hands up. Councillor Mark Young, Mark, next. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I just wanted to check with Gareth. I have previously declared an interest as chair of planning for Denbighshire. So is that a rolling declared, or should I not take part in this vote? Just any advice would be appreciated. Thank you.
So as the item is looking at the business case rather than the planning issues, so noting at best, Mark, it would, Councillor Young, it would be a personal interest at this stage.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Deputy Chair, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Having seen or having been at the meeting the other day regarding the new training centre, or the proposed new training centre, and as a former member of the Fire Authority, or sorry, as a former member of the Fire and Rescue Service, and actually having been an instructor in a training school, I am overjoyed at seeing some of the proposals that they're offering. And if I was younger and still in the Fire and Rescue Service, I would love to be in the training department when this is achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Gareth Roberts. Gareth?
Hello, Bore Da. Yes, just a quick question, please. I'd like to know what has been investigated with regards to sharing these facilities with North Wales Ambulance Service and also the police to save, some public money in these times, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Diolch. Stuart?
Yeah, so very early stages of the project. I've personally had initial discussions with the Deputy Chief Constable, North Wales Police, around our plans. And I know that through the Joint Emergency Services group that the Chief attends as well, that there is awareness of our plans as well on a national level with the Welsh Ambulance Service. So it's very early days. There are, like I say, further discussions we can have around how we can maybe share the facilities. Collaboration is key. I think looking at the plans that we've discussed at the working group last week around how we could become a centre of excellence for certain areas and being able to share our site with other emergency services, other partners as well. So yeah, it's all part of the discussions at the moment, but it is still early days.
Thank you.
Councillor Nigel Smith. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, there is no doubt that our once state-of-the-art facility in Dolgellau many years ago has fallen behind and is showing its age. For me, I'd be happy to propose that we note this report, but with my audit head on, I just worry that it's affordable. But we will find out, no doubt. Thank you.
I'm sure that we will scrutinise the business case very closely. So it had already been proposed, so I'll take you as seconder, Nigel, if I may. I can't see any other hands raised, so will you show that you accept the recommendations, please? Champion, that is passed. So Gareth, you've still got, is that just voting, Gareth Sandilands, yeah? Yeah. So that brings the agenda to a close. Can I thank everybody for their contributions and participation today? Diolch yn fawr, pawb. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Diolch, pawb.
Diolch.
Yeah. Will.
Bye. Bye-bye. Will.